get started. So hello everyone, welcome to week 9 of the fellowship program. So this week is a very important week in terms of what we're doing here. We're going through workshop 5, which is how to pitch and how to best present your startup, whether that be to investors in a competition such as ours with the pitch competition, or just in general when you're kind of spreading the word and talking about your startup. And today we have an amazing speaker, Brandy from ATDC, and she's been a big part of Startup Exchange previously through our previous events, and she's been an advisor to the fellowship program, and she's done a lot for us. So I'm really happy that she's here today to give this presentation and workshop. And I'm sure that the teams here will gain a lot of value. Furthermore, we have another founder from ATDC who will hop in today and kind of give a brief introduction and his own perspective on how they're raising money as well as pitching. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. Brandy, I'll pass it on to you to give a quick intro and then the next steps.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Hi, I'm Brandy Nagel. I'd love for you to call me Brandy. I work at Georgia Tech. I work with 3 different groups. I work with ATDC. I work with the Minority Business Development Agency, which has a business center in Atlanta. And I work with a group called the Economic Development Lab. And all 3 of these are related because in all of these, I'm helping founders and business owners grow their business one way or another. I have not pitched myself, so we're going to hear from someone who actually has more pitching experience from me in a short time today. And if you have conflict between what that person says and what I say, listen to them because they have more real world experience. But I have judged competitions and have seen pitches before. And so I'll just share a few things with you, and then I'd like to just figure out what your questions are. So one essential component is the preparation. You should know who you're talking to and what you're going to say and what you're going to ask for. The point of a pitch is to move your business forward. So what are you going to ask for? Is it money, or is it advice, or is it connections? There's other things worth asking for, but those are the 3 big ones. If you know that you don't want money, then don't ask for money. If you are not asking for money, then ask for advice and ask for connections. A lot of investors would much rather give you advice and give you connections, and that is as valuable as money in a lot of cases. If you're in the middle of a pitch, and this is kind of like the bigger scheme of things, if you're pitching to someone and you think, God, this guy's kind of a jerk, you're probably right, and trust your instincts. If you think this person is underestimating me and is treating me like I'm an idiot, you are probably right. Trust your instincts. Some investors are not nice people. And because you are college students, even though you go to a very fine school, they don't think that you are very smart, and they will treat you like you are idiots. But I know that you are smart people, and you should trust your instincts. There is no amount of money that anyone can give you that is worth it if they treat you like trash. So preparation is important. You should know who you're going to present to. You should rehearse. You should practice. The first time I did a really big presentation, it was for 200 people in the room. And I practiced it as I was driving to and from Georgia Tech, to and from work. I didn't work at Georgia Tech back then. As I was in the car driving back and forth. And I did that for about 3 or 4 weeks. And I practiced it, I think, about 70, maybe 75 times. And I would just be in the car driving and just went through my words. I'd make a mistake, pause, go back and say it again. If it's 2 of you pitching, which happens very often in these kinds of pitches, then practice. And practice the graceful turnover. So one of you will say this paragraph, and then you give a verbal or a visual cue to your partner, and or you can say, and now I'm going to ask Asha to speak, and actually make a graceful turnover, because one of the things that you're judged on is your teamwork, how well the two of you communicate. For most pitches, you have a slide deck, and whether you're in person or delivering it online, I can almost promise you that your fonts are too small. Your font should probably be 20 to 30 point font at a very minimum. That should be the small print on your slides. And make all of your letters bigger, use fewer words, keep it really clean, really concise, really simple. What you want is for people to listen to you, to listen to your voice and ask questions. So it's not necessary to put all the words on every slide. And it's okay if you have a few slides that are just an image and 2 or 3 words or one phrase or one sentence. You should always know how much time you're allotted for a presentation, whether it's in a pitch competition or it's live. And if you can possibly find a way to have a clock in front of you to keep track of time. If you're like me, when I start speaking, I do sort of lose track of how quickly time is passing. And if you're given 10 minutes, then you really want to use those 10 minutes. It's okay to be a little bit short, but if you're given 10 minutes and you finish in 6, feels like something's incomplete there, right? But if you get to 9.5 minutes and you're only halfway through your presentation, that's not good either. Something that I've seen done recently that I thought was really smart was someone signed into the Zoom a second time. And on that Zoom screen, they just had a timer, which I thought was brilliant. Like, it's perfect. Why doesn't Zoom have a timer? There should be a timer, but they don't. Okay, so preparation, like the moments before you're going to pitch. If you're like most of us, you feel like anxious. Sometimes your hands are sweaty, or sometimes you're just like sweaty, and it's your flight or fight response activating. And so you can breathe, drink cold water or hot tea. But I find breathing is really helpful. If it's just going to be this that shows like head and shoulders, then I try and do a complete stretch out so that I don't look tense as I'm presenting. And there's a fun TED talk about standing with power. And the researcher is Amy Cuddy, and she says, if you do the Wonder Woman position where you've got hands on hips, right? Do that for the 2 or 3 minutes before you do your presentation. It actually releases the happy chemicals in your brain, and you will feel more in control and more powerful when you do that presentation. Then the other thing I wanted to say is that there's kind of a standard flow of the slides that you would go through in a pitch competition. In some competitions, they're given to you. But in the real world, it's just a standard 12 or 13 that they use. And it's, what's the problem? What's your solution? Who's your team? Those standard, you can find all of that on Google. Try to stick to the provided slides as much as possible. And if you decide you want to do something different, do it with intention. You should have a good reason if you're not going to include a team slide. You should have a really good reason to explain why you're deviating from a commonly accepted practice. It's okay to break the rules sometimes, but don't do it just because. Do it because you have a reason. So I'll pause there and see, what kind of questions do you have, or just tell me more about the pitch competition that you're getting ready for.
Yeah, so I guess to kind of give a quick background on the pitch competition, I think this is the first time the teams are also hearing about this, since we are getting close to it, but I think it's important to let all the teams know the structure of the pitch competition. So at a very high level, we'll kind of do an introduction to the event, and then we'll start doing the pitches. So each team will have about 2 to 3 minutes to pitch their idea to judges. And I believe we're going with a pre-recorded style. So we'll have like this whole event's virtual, so everything will be pre-recorded, and then we play that video during the event, and then after the video plays, each team gets 3 to 4 minutes time for feedback questions from the judges, and then we move on to the next participant or team. And then at the very end, while judging occurs, there's about 15 to 20 minutes where the judges will deliberate on who is the winner, or just in terms of just going through the rubric of what they're looking for. While that's happening, we'll have an open demo session where each team will have a little table on a platform such as Gatherly or Zoom. Gatherly, and we'll have everyone just kind of have open tables where people can talk to the audience members can talk to teams.
Great.
Yeah, that's the high level structure. So so yeah, again, one important fact is each team will have 2 to 3 minutes to pitch. So that is a constraint that teams need to be aware of.
And do you know at this point if you'll give teams a format to follow, or you don't know yet?
Yeah, we wanted to keep it as open as possible, just because we want to give the free rein to the teams. But of course, like if there is something that you feel, Brandy, if there's anything that is valuable, or a template or some sort of like structure to what is or could be included in a pitch that is 2 to 3 minutes, I think that'd be very, very helpful for our teams.
Okay. Yeah, so I can tell you what judges are often looking for, and I haven't seen the rubric for this, but I've judged this competition in years gone by. I think in 2019 I judged this competition. So the judges are often looking for, is this a real problem in the world? And does this seem like a reasonable solution? Is there a market for it? Is there evidence of that? Is it a complete team? We're looking just for those general points. So you have a lot of different choices with how you might open your presentation. So it's going to be 2 or 3 minutes video, and it's probably up to you if you want to make it high production values or low, but and I think that does have some influence on judges. But I have judged competitions where we said, you know what, that guy was the worst presenter, but his idea is killer, and so that's who deserves first place. So even if your production values are not outstandingly perfect, you can still do a great job. So in a 2 or 3 minute video, you need to probably outline it or storyboard it just rough and say, you know, these are the 5 things I'm going to cover, because you can't cover 20 items in 3 minutes. And so it's probably problem and solution, team, marketplace, market, and maybe just one other thing. Focus on your strengths, not on your weaknesses. And your last statement should be, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you in the breakout room, or, you know, whatever the right language is. Don't waste time in your video thanking the organizers, or don't take a long time explaining or introducing. It can be as simple as, you know, there's 2 of you maybe, and the first one pops up and says, hi, my name is this, and the other person says, hi, my name is this. Here's the problem we went after. Describe the problem, describe the solution. Here's what we've done so far. Da 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 da. Here's what we think comes next. Blah 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 blah. And then make your ask and thank people at the end. We look forward to talking with you later this evening. Simple as that. If you want to make it a little bit more of a production, then you can add backgrounds and slides and animations and all of that. But having a high production value video will not help you win if the idea is not well thought out. I will say sometimes I have seen teams struggle. Oh, so you may know that there's a Georgia Tech alum, couple of alums who are working on a startup called Gimme Vending. So it's Corey and Evan, and they went through Startup Exchange. And Gimme Vending is something that they started as students, and it's one of the most innovative companies in Georgia, has won some prizes and some competitions. And during one of their pitches, when they were a younger startup, Corey, the founder, is really super articulate. He is a salesperson and silver-tongued, just everything, never a misstep when he talks, right? But he actually had one of his teammates speak, and his teammate was really working hard to become a better speaker. And I asked Corey, would you prefer to speak because you're more comfortable with it? And he said, no, so-and-so isn't as good of a speaker as I am, but he needs the practice. And they did great. Even though Corey was the better speaker, really the better presenter, they still did fine. I have on occasion struggled to understand someone who had English as a second language, and it just forces me to like put down my pencil and lean in and pay closer attention so I can catch the words. But that doesn't influence whether the pitch is successful or not. I'll pause here. I need some questions from you.
I got a question. So when you're talking about like there being a real addressable market or a real problem in the world, what sorts of qualifications do you look for to kind of validate that it is a real problem? Are you looking for like statistics or like testimonials, or what sorts of things are people generally looking for in that sense?
Yeah, two things, statistics and a story.
Okay.
So if it's an addressable problem, I generally want to hear a statistic about it to verify that it is something important in the world. And maybe you've even seen presentations that begin with something like, according to the World Health Organization, 15 million people every day, da 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 da. And that's not fascinating storytelling, but it's a meaningful fact. So there's a way to mix a fact and a story together that actually makes it more compelling. And it might start with something like 15 million other people every day of the week, this person struggles with diabetes or hair loss or whatever, right? And put a story with the statistic to make it easier to remember, because humans are storytelling creatures and we remember stories better than facts. Put the two together, but the trick is to have some structure to it, so that you say something at the beginning, say something halfway through, and then as you finish your presentation, you go back to that original story and put a little closure to it. So it might be like 15 million other people, this person suffers from this problem. And you talk about the problem, the solution you've devised, and then you might say, with so-and-so in mind, we've created this kind of a solution. We've gone out and done this kind of customer discovery, and here's our team. Tell a little bit more about the team, and then in the closing, you go back to that first point of the story. We look forward to helping people just like so-and-so deal with the discomfort or pain of this kind of a problem. So hit it three different times in that presentation. And the statistics should come from a credible source, right? And it's not even that it has to be a global, worldwide problem. It doesn't have to be diabetes. That's an easy example to refer to. It can be anything, but it should be a fact that people can put into context. And then you mentioned testimonials, and that can also be very powerful. It might be that you put a testimonial on the screen of your video with an image of the person and a testimonial, and it might be 2 or 3 sentences, but then your comment would be, and we've worked with so-and-so who gave us a glowing review. You don't have to read the whole testimonial. I see that we have a new person has joined us. I see Richard Powers. I wanted to say welcome to Richard.
Hey, Brandy, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, how you doing, Richard?
Okay. Great. I'm struggling because you gave really good advice and kind of said the things that I would say when asked to come. So I will say that I did just get asked yesterday to come and chat, and I'm a little unfamiliar with the context, but I think I've gotten it from you just by listening for the last couple of minutes. So that was some really good advice for these guys. So to introduce myself, my name is Richard Powers. I'm COO and co-founder of Stratos Labs. We are an ATDC company, and we're developing a smart wearable stethoscope to manage chronic lung disease. So while I'm not the pitch guy, like you said earlier, there's some guy who's better at pitching. I'm the guy who's not good at pitching. Our CEO and my co-founder is great at pitching, and that's one of the reasons I hooked up with him, because I'm the tech guy, I'm the geek, and he can talk the language of investors and business. So I say that tongue in cheek because I did go to tech and I have an engineering degree, but also an MBA from tech as well. But I leave the pitching to him, and I'm there for moral support. So I was asked to kind of give some points on what investors were looking for in pitches, and in general, you had some really, really good points, some tactical, like font size and things like that, and be articulate. And it's some basic stuff, but it needs to be said, right? Sometimes folks do not do that. So I think what you also said about describing the problem and making it personal is really important. So for us, it's really nice because my co-founder was born premature. He had RSV, which is a lung infection when he was a baby, and had to spend a lot of time in the hospital. And then he has asthma. He's had asthma his whole life. So at a pitch competition, he had the idea of, I've had asthma my whole life, and whenever I go to the doctor, he just asks me, how much have you been wheezing? And you don't remember how much you've been wheezing. Is it more or less than it used to be? In fact, he's just walking out right now. And so he said, why not have a way to quantify how much I've been wheezing or coughing? So that's our ultimate moonshot, is to allow doctors to know ahead of time if something bad's going to happen to their patient. So, and we call that, we have a fancy way of saying that. We say we're detecting pre-symptomatic signs of worsening disease state, so they can intervene sooner, avoid these bad events, and save money for the healthcare system, have better outcomes for the patients, and it's a win-win. So it's funny because that's our ultimate goal. But in the meantime, we've been approached by big pharma for capturing these lung sounds as objective outcome measures for their drug clinical trials. So not only is that revenue in the near term, but that is a good way to collect this data to ultimately show that, to prove our thesis, which is by monitoring these lung sounds, you can intervene sooner and have better outcomes. So that's kind of my background, the story of Stratos a little bit. What investors are looking for in the pitch is, I'd say it varies on the investor. So it kind of depends on the stage. You guys, I'm guessing, are pitching potential seed stage investors or angels. And they're a little more forgiving, I would say, on the immediate revenue need. So when we're pitching, I don't know if you guys have ever watched Silicon Valley, but there's a guy there who's got a startup, and he's going to this mentor guy, and he's talking about revenue. The guy says, no, you don't want revenue, because if you have revenue, then they're just going to want more revenue. So it's true. It's kind of true. What we've seen is that if you're pre-revenue, they want to see revenue. If you have revenue, well, that's good, but that's not in the area we want. If you have revenue in the area they want, then they want to see growing. So I say all that tongue in cheek because different investors want different things. But ultimately, what Brandy said earlier was right. You have to pitch a compelling story, and that's something that is very important. I think she was right to say humans remember stories. So you've got to pitch it as engineers. I assume most of you folks are engineers, perhaps. We're used to equations and coming up with the answer. There is an answer, and there's one way of doing things, and that's not the same in the real world. So we just want to pitch them. Also, the other trap that folks fall into is here is a cool technology. Here is my cool engineering feat. It defies the laws of physics, so it should get funded, and it should be a company. Well, no, you've got to solve a problem. It's all about understanding what problems exist and explaining how your solution to that problem, well, first of all, how your technology is a solution to that problem, but also it is nice if there is an existing solution to that problem that isn't as good as yours, because what that does is it validates that that truly is a problem that needs a solution. And if yours is better, it's a lot easier to see that how it's better, and you can quantify that. In the case of truly innovative technology, sometimes you run into the issue of this is a problem and there's no existing solution. So we're not a Me Too product, we're not improving on something, but that is it's a higher bar as far as defining the landscape and the problem and how your solution really does solve that problem, but then how are you going to prove to them that people will buy your solution and how much they will pay for it. So I'm getting way too much information for a 2 or 3 minute pitch. But just in general, these are the types of things investors like to see. And I'm emphasizing what Brandy said about that. So the other thing I would say, yeah, sure.
Hey, Richard, I want to ask you a question. Have you given a pitch or been part of a pitch where something went wrong?
Yeah, actually, we're part of TMCX, which is a Texas Medical Center innovator in Houston. And they have intro music, and I think the intro music for our CEO is wrong or something like that. And just rather than getting thrown off, he kind of rolled with it and made a funny comment about it. And that sort of broke the tension. So the other thing I would say is that your audience doesn't necessarily know what you're going to say. So if you've practiced it, you're getting it different than you did in practice, that's okay, because they don't know what you were supposed to have said. I've actually that same demo at that same pitch competition, the guy, there was a guy, wasn't one of our guys, but another guy pitching, sort of stumbled, and you could tell he was trying to remember what he had practiced instead of just knowing his product, knowing the market, and talking about it, right? The other thing I would say is don't memorize too much because you sound like you're reading, and then if you get messed up, you're worried about where you are versus just telling your story. So I came in today, I don't have any slides, nothing, no bullet points, nothing, just trying to tell a story and go along. So this guy apparently lost track of where he was, and then he cursed. He was like, which kind of surprised me because I've never seen it in a pitch competition before. And so I don't think he did too well. So I would say if you do mess up, that's okay. Depending on the mess up, it can show you're human, and judges like that as opposed to a robot. You have some personality. You're willing to make mistakes, which you're going to as a startup anyway. So it actually can kind of show how resilient you are to making mistakes. So Randy, I don't know if that's where you're going with that question, but
yeah, I mean, just stuff just happens. Things go sideways. I can say for myself, I was involved in a National Science Foundation program for several years, and I had to deliver this highly scripted training session. And it was a room full of scientists and researchers from universities all across the US. So of course they're going to ask questions, right? Because they're pathological learners. And then they'd ask me a question, and it took me off my script, and I would sweat, and I could just feel getting warm and stressed out. And so I was talking with a friend of mine and said, God, it's excruciatingly stressful. And she said, you need to take an improv class. And that improv class really changed how I do presentations now. So I have had things go wrong. I actually fell on stage one time, no big deal. The stakes are low. Everything is going to be fine. But that only comes with practice. So think of what you're doing right now as practice for becoming a really good pitcher for the future. So Richard, can you talk about the best pitch you've ever seen and what was so good about it?
A lot. I think, I don't recall one specifically, although Nick, my co-founder, does some really good pitches. But I think in general, the best ones are those that leverage a personal story. I mean, I think that's one of the advantages Nick has when he pitches is like, he shows a picture of him as a little kid, and you know, it's kind of a vulnerability, right? You put up the picture of you as a kid and say, this is my story. I had asthma. I was, ended up in the emergency room. I would be on the playground trying to play with my friends, and then I'd overdo it and not even realize my symptoms were worsening. And before I knew it, I had passed out. So I think that in general, a compelling personal story, if you can tie it to some personal story, it doesn't have to be you necessarily, someone you know, a friend, whatever, but just a story about the problem. So a story related to the problem that makes it personal, that people can identify with. And then a lot of times, the element of surprise is interesting too. So if you're going down and telling the story and it doesn't sound anything like it's related to your product, and then bam, there's a flip, that's a nice surprise too, and that's engaging, and that gets people to remember you. So I think in general that those are good pitches, the ones that focus on the problem and how you can solve that problem, and the pitches that don't necessarily focus on the technology. And I know coming out of university and with engineering backgrounds, we tend to, and I say we because I'm part of that, we tend to want to focus on this is really cool tech. And maybe Apple can get away with that. This is really cool tech, you should buy it. But as pitchers, we cannot. Yeah, I would say make it compelling, show how it, and state the problem. You can tell that anecdote, but you still need to say how big this problem is. It can't just be, well, I personally had a problem with this and I'm the only one who does that, so you should invest in my company. No, I have this problem. There are 3 million other people every year that have this problem that are willing to pay. And so, yeah, you should fund my better technology.
Do you all have questions for Richard? Richard is acting modest, like I'm not the guy who knows so much about pitching, but he actually does know a lot about pitching.
Well, I would say the other, I know what investors like to pick on you about, because what I'll say is the interesting thing about investors is they rarely tell you, no, I don't think that's a good idea because of this. What they'll say is, well, you're too early, or you're too late, or they come up with these other things, which unfortunately is not very helpful to you as a pitch person. So I would also say that if you can, and you have the opportunity, of course, don't be rude, but try to really get honest feedback from them as to why they pass, because you start to hear the same types of answers that aren't really constructive like that. And then you start to dig further and you find out, okay, well, maybe they didn't really believe the technology. They didn't believe your market projections. They didn't. The other thing I'll say that I don't know that you guys have that much control over, and you guys are in a little different stage being in school, but especially as you get farther along, what investors are going to look at is the team. I've had investors at a company, a startup I was with before that ultimately got acquired. In the medical space, one of our investors said, I'd rather invest in an A team with a B idea than a B team with an A idea. So it really, and this is, I could go off on a tangent about the philosophy of IP, but it really is the team that makes it happen. I mean, you got to have the intellectual property checkbox check for the investors, but you can have all the intellectual property in the world, but if you can't execute, you're not going to make it happen. And investors can sense that in a team. And so what I would say about some of the successful teams that I've been on and seen is that they understand what skill sets are needed to bring a product to market and make it happen. And those skill sets are different for each stages. And again, I'm getting well beyond a 2-3 minute pitch here, but early on, you just need dive in and make it happen, wear many hats, do everything. But as you get big and start to grow, then you get more and more specialized with the skill set. And I would say, don't be afraid to admit what you don't know, because people know you don't know everything. And in fact, the fact that you're willing to go out and solicit feedback, guidance, help from people who've done this before is important, because that allows you to learn quickly and move faster and not make mistakes, especially if you heed the guidance of these other folks who've made these mistakes in the past, like I have. So my co-founder was very smart in that he knew what he didn't know, and he went out and sort of found a team that had similar passions and a history of doing things that could make this happen. And investors are really looking for that track record. And that's where angels are coming in, because they'll kind of take more of a chance on you, and you can sort of build the track record if you hit your milestones. So I think the other thing investors want, once they've invested in you, or if they're contemplating investing in you, if you can show a history of hitting milestones, saying what you're going to do and doing it in the time frame that you say is very important. That shows that you know you can plan, you know what's involved in executing things and properly estimating them. And that's very important to prove, because if you don't know what it takes to get something done, how are you going to develop a budget and a timeline that you're going to be able to stick to, because you're going to run over budget and you're going to run over timeline. So I think even if it's small things, just small little milestones that you can put down and say, we expect to have a prototype by here, and a proof of concept here, a prototype by here. Just lay that out and make sure you can hit that. So I would say be aggressive in the timelines, but somewhat realistic. So there's always this tension between promising that you're going to develop the next time travel machine tomorrow and reality that it's going to take a lot longer than that. So I know the points I'm making aren't necessarily specific to pitches, but I think in general startups and what investors are looking for, these are some of the things they're looking for. So sorry, I just threw that in there. I know I'll open it up to questions now.
Yeah, what questions do you have for Richard?
I guess I'll ask one. How has your pitch changed over the course of your experience?
It's funny, because we joke that you've gotten to steady state when the feedback you get starts to contradict the other feedback you got. So, oh, it's too long. Oh, now it's too short. So at some point, you're going to get contradictory feedback. So our pitch has changed over time, partially in response to customer feedback. So we've talked to our customers. That's a big thing, right? You want to have, and if you go to any sort of, there's an I-Core program, Brandy, you were talking about NSF, and we actually have a phase 1 SBIR grant, and we're going to apply for a phase 2 NSF SBIR grant. And so part of that phase 1 is a Beat the Odds boot camp, where they make you do customer interviews, and that is really powerful. If you come, it's really an inexpensive way to learn. An expensive way to learn is to build a product based on what you think your customer needs, and then take it to a customer. That's going to be expensive. A cheap way is to go to them with a thought, idea, a picture, a drawing, whatever, and say, actually what you should do, not that, you should go to them and say, not exactly what are all your problems, but I hear you're having issues with this. Can you tell me about how you're currently trying to solve that issue, solve that problem? Are you trying to, so understand from your potential customers what their problem is, and try not to lead. The hardest thing to do when you're interviewing potential customers is lead the witness, right? So really listen to them, and then don't try to pitch them and sell them on your product, but try to get feedback on a proposed solution, and really listen. Don't sort of dismiss any objection they may have, because if someone is willing to give you that feedback, you need to listen to it, because a lot of times people aren't going to be nice. They're going to want to be too nice and not give you constructive feedback. So listen. So it's very powerful if you come back to an investor and say, we've talked to 100 potential customers, and 95% of them has said that they're really having this problem, and 90% of them have said that they would pay, there's a little trickiness about willingness to pay, but anyway, are willing to pay this much per month to solve it. So you've got hard data from folks you've talked to that are potential customers in your field that are, in our case, maybe pulmonology. We talked to 100 pulmonologists who really have this issue, understanding what's going on with their patients. And so they end up back in the emergency room, and that costs $10,000 a readmission. So they're easily willing to pay $500 a month to not have to have the system that they can monitor that keeps their patients from coming back. So having customer feedback is very powerful, and it's an inexpensive way to understand what your product needs to do. So that has really driven our pitch over time, I would say, is our sort of probing the edges of what the customer wants, and moving from our moonshot, which, like I said, was sort of a readmissions play, where we said, we're going to show that if you wear this device and the doctor listens to your lung sounds, they can intervene sooner and you won't get sick, so you won't end up in the hospital. That's a great moonshot, but what investors are going to ask is, okay, where's the data to show that? And we don't have it yet. So what we've done is we've had pharma companies come to us and say, hey, we have this problem. We're willing to pay a lot of money per patient. We'll go ahead and sign a contract with you. So we've evolved our pitch based on our experience with customer traction and customer needs. And that really resonates with investors when they hear us say, because we can shoot, it's great because when they start to go down the path of, oh, well, do you have this data for readmissions? Because they have this rubric of this hat they put on when they're evaluating digital health companies. Well, that must mean reimbursement and readmission reduction. So where's your data on that? And we say, we're going to get it, but here's how we're going to accumulate it and get paid. And that really changes the conversation. So I'd say we've had the luxury of running into or talking to enough customers that we've really, the customers drive the evolution of our pitch.
Other questions for Richard?
We had a question. We were kind of wondering, what is the biggest mistake that you see new founders making in pitching?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's a mistake, but I'll say it's a tendency to overpromise. I feel like my job a lot of times, CEOs tend to be visionary and for good reason. I mean, they have this big vision of what the grand future is like, and they want to go there and they want to paint that, and you have to in pitches. And I feel like my job as sort of COO is to grab onto the CEO on one side and hold on to the rest of the company with other, and kind of keep those from getting too far apart. Because you got to paint a picture and you got to paint a vision, but you also have to paint that picture in a way that's credible and show how you can get there. So I'd say the biggest mistake is sort of, especially early on, is overpromising without really knowing how you're going to deliver. So and that kind of gets back to the team. If you have this team that's done it before, I remember early on with my co-founder, he was that, people have these paradigms of how fast things should be developed. In the medical device world, it's slowed down by necessity because of the process, the regulatory process you have to go through. And I remember we were having a discussion a couple of years ago, and it was probably about May, and he asked when the software would be done. And I said, probably December. And he was kind of shocked and said, what? And he goes, it should be July. I said, no, it's going to be December. And he goes, wrong answer. And I've been around long enough just to let that one slide. But he said, well, why do you say it's going to be December? And I said, because I've done this before and I know how long it takes. So that was the only time that's ever happened. And we have a really good relationship. And so there's good that there's this tension there, because his job is to push and make sure that it really is going to take that long, and then not just sandbagging. So we make a good team, but that's also why you hire a good team. So I would say that the mistake a lot of folks make is in general overpromising, under-delivering, underestimating the amount of resources it takes to get something done, the amount of time, like I just said, to get something done, because things always take longer than you think they'll take, and take much more money than you think to get them done. So that's tough, sort of honing in on that aggressive, optimistic estimate. You don't want to be too conservative with it, but you don't want to be unrealistic either. I think that's the core mistake. And then maybe not doing enough market research, maybe falling in love with the technology. And I guess another way of saying this is falling in love with your original idea and not being willing to change it or let it go or let it pivot to really what the customer needs, sort of staying, trying to hold on to that original idea.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times the best companies are the ones that have completely changed from their original idea, which is interesting, because I hear, again, conflicting advice on these things. I hear, oh, stick to it. They were going to give up, but they kept going and they persevered and they made it. And then I heard, well, pivot, because that's, because it's kind of the opposite, not quite the opposite of persevering.
Yeah.
Say adjust based on customer feedback, and don't just stay steadfast that your initial idea anyway, is the right idea.
Mm-hmm. I want to build on something you said, Richard, about you and your co-founder. And so it is a good thing if within your team you have one person who's a dreamer and one person who's a doer. And that doesn't mean that the dreamer doesn't do things, because dreamers work hard too. But one person tends to be more realistic and earthbound, and then the dreamer is the visionary. And if you are one of those two, then you probably need someone who's the other. Does that sound right, Richard?
That's absolutely right. And that's why my co-founder and I make a good team. And our chief medical officer is even more visionary, sky high in the clouds than even my CEO. And I was having a conversation talking about our chief medical officer, who's like a Penn-trained pulmonologist. He was in pharma for 30 years. If you saw him, he looks kind of like Santa Claus. He's like this old wizened, big white beard, big bushy beard, but very smart guy. And when he talks to pharma, it's funny, because they're our potential customers, but they're asking us, by the time he finishes talking to them, they're asking him to help write the protocol for the study. Mm-hmm. So, but I was talking to my CEO the other day about that. And I said, he's great to have on calls with investors because he paints that picture. And I laughed. I said, I cannot dream that big because I know how hard it is to get things done. So I completely agree that you need that dreamer who's a little detached from reality, because that's going to limit the picture you paint. And so if I were to try to paint a picture, I would paint it conservatively so that I knew I could finish the picture. But you need that big vision to paint the picture of where you can go, and to make the investors believe that you can hit that $1 billion valuation. So yeah, that's a great point, and I think that makes a good team too.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I did have one question. So what do you remind yourself of the most when you're pitching? Like, still to this day, like if there happens to be like one little thing you remind yourself before
breathe. Remember to breathe.
Breathe.
I gotta make sure.
Go, speak slower than you think you should, because you're always talking faster than you think you are. I've seen people just get up and and my daughter does this, but she's in 3rd grade. But still, it's funny to watch her practice for something, and they just all go so fast. slow down, pause, because you're familiar with your product, with what you want to say, but the person who's listening is not. So it takes them a little time to follow. And if you pause, and I probably am guilty of not doing this, so thanks for bringing it up, that gives them time to digest what you've said. So I think go slow, breathe. And the other thing I'd say to realize is that they're people too. It's easy to sort of picture them as the big bad judge and that are really scary, but they're people too. They're just on the other side of the table, and they've gone through things that have brought them to this point too. And so they're going to interpret what you say through their lens of their experience, what they've gone through, but they're just people too. So I think that makes them a little more approachable. And I think when you tell these stories, that's why stories are important, especially personal stories, because it allows you to connect on a human level. So just remember, you're talking to a person, you're not talking to a machine. And I think that kind of helps you relax a little bit. And with the breathing technique, I think that's helpful. I would also say that while you want to consider every pitch important, the world is not writing on every single pitch, and that's going to help you relax a little bit too. And if you just see it as you want to do well and you want to practice, you want to make sure you're well prepared, but every time is a practice, and you're going to get better. So just think that you're always getting better. You're always learning from every pitch. And if you see it as a learning opportunity instead of a test, I think that just changes your mindset and not only makes you open to feedback, but probably gives you a more relaxed mindset.
Awesome.
And drink water if you can too, as I'm doing
So
now.
breathe, drink water, food as well?
But no, I wouldn't do food. I'd be careful of any gastrointestinal things. You're nervous anyway, so I wouldn't want to rock the boat there. But just water is good. Although I've heard, Brandy, you mentioned ice water. I've heard that room temperature water is maybe a little better because cold water can kind of shorten your vocal cords a little bit and maybe make it a little more strained for you to talk. Yeah. So either hot tea, I think that was a good one, or room temperature water, and not too much. You'll be in the restroom when it's your time to pitch.
So these entrepreneurs are going to create a video, Richard. It's a mixed format. They'll do a 2 to 3 minute video, and then they'll have 3 to 4 minutes of Q&A a little bit later. So I want to say one thing that I think is important to recognize about that format is that your video should be interesting enough that the judges want to come and talk to you during the breakout rooms or ask you questions during the Q&A. That's really important. And one technique you could do to make that happen is in your video say, and I'd like to tell you more about blah, blah, blah. Ask me during the Q&A or come see me afterwards in the breakout room. Like plant a teaser in your video to encourage people to talk with you later.
Yeah, and that's actually, it's an interesting point. Now, did they, this is interesting, do the teams get to record their own video, or is the video recorded and they pitch live, but that's recorded and then they play back the recording, or can they have like multiple takes?
Yeah, they have a multiple takes. They can take as many times as they want. Oh. It's just the teams forward the video 2 to 3 minutes. Actually, I think I misspoke. I think it's 3 to 4 minutes video, and then it's flipped around. The judging feedback is 2 to 3 minutes. So they have a little more time, so 3 to 4 minutes to pitch. So it's just a recording that's sent to us, and then we play it during the event, and then in a live setting virtually. The judges will ask questions to the teams that will be present on the call as well.
You guys get to cheat. I mean, you have to do it over again. You take two. So that takes the pressure off a little bit, but it also adds pressure for it to be pretty good if you have multiple takes. So you'll get a lot of practice.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, previously we've done it in person live, and the atmosphere is much different, and it's more, I guess, competitive, and just like in a way, like it's just a different feeling. But just due to the nature of handling everything virtually, I think unfortunately we're just going to go with the recording style, or fortunately for some teams that are a little more nervous than others.
I do say that you're going to have to be more dramatic, and maybe that's not the right word, maybe energetic on the video for that to come across. In person, you have your personality, your full body on stage that you can move around and talk and walk. But in a video, you're limited to that box. And so I think you're really going to have to come across with energy because they're watching a lot of videos and it's all going to seem the same. So you're really going to have to, I think, put a lot more energy into it for that to come across on the video. So practice, watch it again, have other friends watch it and give you feedback on whether they could even get through the 3 or 4 minutes, whether it was engaging enough to get through the 3 or 4 minutes, and keep doing it until it is interesting enough for someone to watch the whole 3 or 4 minutes. Because 3 or 4 minutes it's short, but it's long if you have to sit there and watch a video. So that's just advice off the top of my head, never having really done a recorded pitch before, but I do see the limitations. You just think about it how it is on Zoom, right? You've really got to step it up a level if you want to convey energy.
And so we are at around 5 o'clock, and I want to respect everyone's time. I know everyone's having quite a busy day just with classes or work, but Brandy, Richard, do you guys have any, I guess, final last minute pieces of advice or any last minute questions from the teams?
The one question I always ask when I'm judging a pitch competition during the Q&A is, if they haven't told me exactly who their customer, I will ask, who is your customer? And if they have addressed that, how many people are there like that in the world? And if they can't answer, that's a really bad sign.
Yeah, if you don't know your market size, that's pretty fundamental.
What about you, Richard? What are your last thoughts?
Again, I think it's going back to take breath, relax, really believe in what you're talking about and have energy, enthusiasm, and tell that story. Believe in it, have your authenticity come through in the video. They're going to see whether you really believe in this or not, and make sure that comes across in the video.
Awesome. And with that, I guess I have a few closing updates. So real quick, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. So this is kind of more relevant for the teams, but at a high level, just looking forward, I know today we have the workshop, our final workshop. So it's bittersweet. This is the last one, but it's really exciting because, you know, we're here, guys. We're making it. And then next week is our final workday. So for the final workday, what I guess is kind of expected is we're going to do something similar to what we did in workday 3, where each team kind of has their presentation or slide decks ready. And we'll kind of do a live presentation. Everyone kind of pitches for their 2 to 3 minutes. And we'll have a few mentors kind of stick around and just give some feedback on your pitches for that. And I think at the last 20 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, we have a speaker from Contrary Capital, Hunter Hancock, who is a pretty cool guy. He's really invested in the Georgia ecosystem, and he's going to give a presentation on like kind of what's next for after the fellowship program, what you can look out for, whether that be for reaching out to VCs, angel investors, or organizations like Contrary Capital. So I think that's going to be a very informative talk. And then, so that weekend, we'll give you some time to kind of take in that feedback, digest everything, and work on your pitches. But we want to have pitch decks as well as the team info and the pitch, like the pitch video, which is 3 to 4 minutes. It's going to be due on 4/18. So I think that's a Sunday before the event. And I know previously we decided on having the event on 4/16, but we had to unfortunately move it a week forward because of a conflict with TEDx. So TEDx is actually was going to have their full event on 4/16, actually at the exact same time. So so we just had to move around because we needed some help from Tech Square TL, which they were the ones who kind of did everything virtually, and TEDx is in person. So their resources are split if we had it on the same day. So, and in fact, it kind of works out nicely because again, rather than it being a Friday, we have a Thursday event. So kind of aligns with our Thursday meeting times. So yep, the official pitch competition is the 22nd from 4 to 5:30. And yeah, just be prepared with kind of things that we talked about today. And more information will come out about like what's required and what's kind of expected and along those lines. So the event is completely virtual. You are, I guess, required to have a pitch if you want to compete. I guess it kind of makes sense. Also, please do have a pitch deck. I think having something visual is really helpful. And each pitch is 3 to 4 minutes, and there's a hard cap on 4. So like, yeah, we've had problems with teams before who went on for like 5-10 minutes. And yeah, like it's not very nice for the judges because they didn't sign up for that. And then 2 to 3 minutes for the feedback. And yeah, our teams, our fellowship team, alongside our marketing team for Startup Exchange, we'll reach out to you individually, each team, to ask about some just marketing information. So maybe we'll get a little quick Instagram story from you all, like saying, hey, this is our team, kind of just to promote the event. Just kind of information about you or your startup. And maybe think about, I know this is kind of early with your startups, but think about having some sort of logo, or it could be very basic, doesn't have to be something super special. So yeah, that's the big things. And some resources that we've kind of provided is, and I'll put this on the announcements channel, but we've had the recorded version. Let me see if I can share screen. Okay, let's see. Okay, yeah. So the links are kind of in order, but the first one is our virtual pitch competition. So you have access to the full pitch competition from last semester. And yeah, I would highly encourage you all to kind of skim through. You don't have to watch the entire 1 hour and 47-minute video, but kind of look at other pitches and see how they've done it. And I think the event was very well run. So kind of expect something similar, and of course, something better for our event. And then here, this is a page from GT Innovation. And actually here's Brandy. So she's a pretty cool person. We see her everywhere. But here's an awesome event that NAMI from Engage Ventures held. And it's how to pitch like a pro. And I personally went there on my own, like just because I thought it was interesting. And she did a really, really amazing job. Like with pitching, as well as like the design aspect of things and how to have your pitch deck complete. So I would highly recommend you all to take a look at this. And lastly, I can't even, so there's the toolbar here is stuck. Okay, there we go. And then this is the video that Brandy was recommending you all to take a look at. So I also included that as well. So yeah, that's kind of at a high level what all the updates I have. If you have any questions, let me know. But again, big things are happening. We have our final event, our final work day next week, and our pitch competition on the 22nd. So that's all I have. Thank you very much for everyone attending. I appreciate the speakers today coming in on short notice. And yeah, I hope you all have an amazing Thursday.
Good luck, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.